Yeah, man. All right. Here we go. All right. Get there. Thank you. All right, Mr. Administrator. Has there been any items pulled from consent?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have no consent items pulled.
All right. Motion for consent? If there is consent. Consent has been moved by Commissioner Daly, seconded by Commissioner Dozier. All those in favor of the motion on the floor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries with Commissioner Lindley out of chambers. General business.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and we have no speaker cards as well. Your first item on general business is item 7. It seeks your approval of an agreement between Leon County and Leon County Schools to convey property owned by Leon County School Board. This is the Miccosukee Park property, including the Concord School, to Leon County in fulfillment of a conservation easement requirement related to the construction of the Leon County School Board's bus transportation facility. As included in detail in this item, under this agreement, the county will acquire land and buildings that the school board no longer needs, but that the county, as you know, commissioners, has invested in significantly over the past few years, constructing parks, fields, playgrounds, basketball courts, and other amenities for the benefit of the citizens in the Miccosukee community. It also provides that the county will place into conservation easement 11.4 acres of property along the shores of Lake Jackson to receive the full environmental mitigation associated with the permitting of the CNG facility. And finally, commissioners, it contemplates that the Boys and Girls Club will continue their use under probably a newly constituted lease between them and the board, which will be brought back to you just as soon as possible. With that, we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney, in abundance of caution and with my position with the Foundation for Leon County Schools, is there any conflict in this item for me?
No, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Deloge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to first thank staff, because this is a long time coming. We have worked on versions of this over the last 10 years, at least, since I've been here, about trying to figure out a consistent way to do this. I'd like to make the motion for staff's recommendation, which is option number 1. And then I just want to thank staff. This has been, like I said, a long time coming. Frankly, the combination of us and the schools out there together, although not bad, we tend to trip over each other a little bit, and I don't think it's really given the Miccosukee community some of the bang for the buck. And I'm hoping that as time goes on, we can develop this into something that really is a real winner for them. And so now what will happen is basically from the corner out, you'll have all the property in one government's control, and we'll be able to manage that and work with that. So thank you for doing that. I look forward to great things in Miccosukee community. Thanks.
Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Commissioner Deloge, thank you for your leadership on this and for staff coming up, Ms. County Administrator, with a very creative solution. I'm excited about this. Glad to see the Boys and Girls Club will continue to be able to use the space, and I think the future sense of place programming could be really interesting. Just within that, and I don't think we need to add this to the motion, Concord was actually my first school. I was there just before it closed, and so I have a particular affinity for it. I'm sure a lot of folks do. And it strikes me that I have no idea if there's any historical recognition of the importance of that school for the community. I don't think it's been on the registry, but whenever that comes back, I would love to see if there's any way we can recognize the importance of that school for the neighborhood and the community of Miccosukee. I think as we go into that sense of place, it might be pretty important to add that into whatever else we do in that way. Ms. County Administrator, you're nodding, so on the same page there, sir?
Yeah, and I don't think we need a motion to do that, but we'd be happy to bring that back as part of the Sense of Place initiative.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Motion has been made by Commissioner Deloge, seconded by Commissioner Dozier. All those in favor of the motion on the floor indicate by saying me. It was worth a try. It was definitely worth a try. All those opposed? Motion carries without objection. Item number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, this item seeks the board's full approval to appoint one citizen to the Early Learning Coalition of the Big Bend region. The eligible applicant included in your materials is Alice Heflin, or Elise Heflin, sorry.
Motion made by Commissioner Dozier, seconded by Commissioner Deloge. For reappointment, all those in favor of the motion on the floor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries without objection. We skipped the presentation portion at the beginning of the agenda. I wanted to get through the business. And now we'll ask for our presenter to come forth and give us a presentation. Presentation on the Shop Local initiative will be given by Mr. Joe Berg. Mr. Joe Berg, you have the floor. I believe this presentation was asked for by Commissioner Dozier. Mr. Berg, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. My name is Joe Berg. I'm the president of the All Saints District Community Association. I'm a little out of my league. I've been spending most of my time with the city about balanced development and neighborhood concerns, and Commissioner Dozier was kind enough to be my shepherd. Also, you guys run so much more efficiently, so by the time I got out of a meeting and ran over here last time, you had already finished your meeting, and Commissioner Dozier asked if y'all would support Shop Local Holiday Weekend, which you voted to do. Today, I would like to explain to you what that is, what we're doing, and then explain why. Because Shop Locally, we know, is a good idea and it feels good, but the sort of academic and economic impacts make it really hard to not fully embrace. So Shop Local Holiday Weekend will be the 8th, 9th, and 10th. The press conference will be held next Tuesday. And this is a coordinated team lift. The city and the county are putting their full support behind it. Media sponsors, online, businesses. We expect it to go pretty successfully viral. We did a test run. Actually, you were just chairman for the first time, Chairman Maddox, and I think Commissioner Lindley, you were just, this is kind of a repeat of the beta. We did a test run of this in 2012, and it sort of perpetuates itself. Media competes to outdo each other with it, and reports after the fact from the chamber were that 15% more shopping happened locally that year. And this year we're putting a lot more organization into it. This is what the posters will look like. I have a video, but it's not going to queue up. And you can see all the organizations on the bottom that are participating, sharing out the information, listing their members. Now, quickly to who we are. Mission is simple. We want to make shopping locally a cultural imperative in Tallahassee. Like picking up after your dog or recycling or caring for neighbors is something we do here. And I want to clarify things we're not. We're not anti-chain. We're pro-local. Everything is necessary. There's no such thing as a locally made cell phone. We all know that. But where you shop does matter, and the impact varies. So we want to educate people about that and connect them to community. We define an independent as, can you change your own logo? We were supposed to launch, we're in our launch phase, we're still acquiring members at this moment, but we were supposed to launch when the hurricane hit, so we instead put our resources into the recovery cash mob, which took off on its own. It was a nice affirmative test. You might have seen our signs around town. We've given a couple hundred of these out over a couple of years. And now just about local businesses before we get into the economic impacts. The businesses define Tallahassee. And when we're talking about bringing visitors, people come for local culture. There are two different type of travelers generally. There are folks who go for sort of manufactured environments that are created for their maximum pleasure, and there are folks who go to experience how the locals live for a weekend. Asheville, Savannah, the places we love going. That would be cultural tourism. Here's some numbers. They're big. Also, the cultural tourists stay longer, take more trips, and spend more money when they're in town. And cultural incubation happens in independent local businesses. The local cultural economy is anchored there. I'll detail that now. When a chain or a franchise, your logo is designed, your building is designed, you may not even have a budget to hire local musicians, but when a local business opens, it's architects, landscape designers, chefs, performance artists, graphic designers, suppliers. The artistic economy really is funded in local businesses. and our businesses keep us from becoming anywhere USA, which as we move forward is keeping balance so that we don't lose our identity or create an identity that doesn't work for everyone is important. And when you look at these cities, the one thing that really does define them is it's just something they do. Somewhere along the line, they either said, we do this, it was already organic to them, or they just avoided or found a balance as they were growing. It's a forethought. It's the flower that grows here. Nobody else can grow it anywhere else. You can't make it when it's gone, and you can't manufacture it. So that is our actual gem, and the fertile soil is the businesses. We got it in spades. All Saints is a perfect example about if we internalize and ingest the value of local businesses and what they provide. When I became the president of the All Saints Association, I started taking an inventory in my own head of what I knew about it, and I was the biggest fan in the world. There are more than 100 local businesses. There are more local small businesses, art studios and makers, outdoor artwork festivals, all of that happening in those 10 blocks than there is for 100 miles around. Right there, we already have the Asheville of North Florida of the region, and I didn't even know that myself. So once you take the pill for local small business, it becomes a forethought. You start to notice these things, like when you drive a car and you notice how many there are on the road. It's a feel-good mantra, but it's a lot more than that. Profound economic impacts. 3 times more money stays local when you shop local. When a dollar goes here or there, that's the difference. This is a group called Civic Economics that has been doing this for 15 years, so that 3 times number comes from their data. You can see on the left in the black box some of the cities they've done studies in, where we've also been. Austin, Boulder, they've done Vegas, Charleston. They would go and do independent studies, and they now have enough qualitative and quantitative data to draw these statistical averages. Here's charts to show that it's real. Here's economic return of indies versus chains. When you spend at a chain retailer, 14% stays local versus 48%. Here's the difference in the restaurant industry. And here are the tiers with your impact. The highest impact is with local businesses. Franchise is also important. Have an error in the middle, and chains have the lowest. And I'm only speaking specifically in economic impact of what stays in Tallahassee and recirculates. The reasons: chains have purchasing agreements, decisions are made for other reasons, profits leave, and they don't have to engage with the local culture economy. The exact opposite happens with local businesses. It builds wealth. It builds stronger communities, and what I like to think about is thinking of neighborhoods as hyperlocal economies unto themselves. If you think of its own economy, you need trade in and out, and it also means when a dollar gets spent at a local corner store and the person lives down the street, that money stays in that economy. They can fix up their house, they can help with blight, they might buy investment properties. So if you look at the health of the neighborhoods, local small businesses really are a bellwether of how well a neighborhood is doing. When there's more wealth, the community can participate in incremental development. We can participate in growth, which is very important to make sure that we're growing from the bottom up and the top down for balance. It's better for the environment, local arts and culture, accountability. There's really no downside. It's a magic lever, which in my career over 18 years I've been searching for. And as I've been exploring this deeper and deeper over the last year, I think we found it. There's some early science, it's not even scientific at this point, but data observations that are being tested as hypotheses. This is just sort of an example of what happens. Shopping locally raises all ships, and I say that there are 3 prongs of shopping locally: more jobs, stronger neighborhoods, more arts and culture. That's sort of how it boils down. Just an example of how the multiplier works. Dollar at the restaurant gets spent with the farmer who hires a hand who might be able to buy a car. Instead of chain, they can't buy from the local farmer, and they have to get their lettuce from approved suppliers. This civic ownership, when a community really decides on every level that it's going to do this deliberately, translates out. It spills out laterally. It makes us think first when we're making decisions about what are the impacts, because what's good for small business is good for Tallahassee. And if we're seeking outside investment and we're not paying attention to what happens after we put the water in the bucket, then we're really losing some opportunity to grow and build community wealth. There are some data shortcomings here. The county did away with its business licenses some years ago. The city ended its on June 30th, though there were only 1,800 business licenses. It was basically a voluntary license with the city, and it wasn't enforced. What we don't have then is really any data about how many local small businesses there are within the county. There are, you can get basically the number of corporations that have been created from the state, but everybody who owns a property can put one in a different holding company. So the closest thing we have is actually food licenses through the Department of Health. There are, I think, about 800 currently there, which is only to say what we're measuring and how we're thinking about things. Going forward, I'm always trying to find ways to get better data to find out what we're doing. And here's the really amazing fact and why I'm taking all this time to ask you to ingest this. According to the Tallahassee Chamber, the FSU and FAMU football games generated $48 million of economic impact. That was direct impact in 2016. Now, let's just assume that all 100% of that stayed in Tallahassee. How do we get to 48 million? What is the actual magic number to match the impact of the football programs? 2.5%. Every 2.5% of local spending in Leon County last year had the economic football impact of both football programs. That's not a hard needle to move. So when we have an opportunity like the visibility with the Shop Local Holiday Weekend, we could get there in one weekend if we do it properly. And to not do it just makes less sense to me. And this year especially is why it matters. This is going to be the worst year for retail closings in recorded history in the United States. 6,700 chain stores are expected to close. The profit margins generally, there are many reasons. We've also heard about Amazon and the explosion of Cyber Monday. But the profit margins on retail are really hard to get to, and they're not huge. So a lot of folks are just shuttering chains. The perfect example of why we want more legs under this stool is Walgreens. The downtown Walgreens and the FAMU Walgreens were profitable. Walgreens is trying to buy Rite Aid, which is big in the Northeast and the Midwest. And they would go from 8,000 to 12,000 pharmacies in the United States and have the most share of any company. The federal government told them, if you want to do that, divest or shut 1,000 pharmacies. We don't know how they picked, but those two got hit in Tallahassee. Local businesses are more accountable and they're rooted to the neighborhood. And it's just an example of outside influences we can't control. Here's some stories on that. And then we have to look at, we don't know the scope. If that does happen and other factors hit, that will eventually hit our local property markets. Supply will be high, lease rates will go down, that'll hit our property tax revenues. We're sort of out there. And I say, I'm a cautious guy, put 19 legs under the stool. This also presents an opportunity with what we're doing right now and what I'm about to ask you to go along with me over the next year or so with some different initiatives that the community has ideas about. Online sales are going up, chain retail locations and sales. The sales are holding level, but that's not good enough, and the locations are closing, so there's a real chance for indies to expand here. And we've also seen that trend in news just since Thanksgiving this year, which was folks are foregoing the mall and they really are going out. It's an experience you can't get anywhere else. Ours is also a value proposition. And to compete on price, you can't. But on value, chains cannot compete with the value that we offer in the community either. And that's generally it. 2.5% is all it takes to match the football programs. This is step one, which is just a coordinated team lift. And step two would be to find a way, which we are hoping and willing to do, to analyze what decisions are being made on an organizational level for all the major institutions in town and to present recommendations for, well, here's 10 simple steps that you could make that we just haven't thought about yet. And if we make that change and everybody makes a change as it affects their organization, it would have a direct impact for how we're making our decisions. So thank you for letting me ramble on, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but I want to thank you all for your support of Shop Local Holiday Weekend. If everyone can make it to the press conference on Tuesday, it would be greatly appreciated. And I would also ask and encourage any of the commissioners to organize their own outings in their neighborhood or with business friends that they like, and encourage citizens to join them for some cocoa or whatever you want to put on.
Thank you for a very thorough presentation. I invite anyone who wants to anyone on the commission who wants to go shopping that weekend, to get me a present. My birthday is actually on the 11th. Yeah, you're all on notice. So shop local, though. Make sure it's a local present. I prefer it that way. But yes, thank you so much for your presentation. I will be there to be able to take part in press conference and wish you well on all the things that you're trying to do. And this is very important for our industry. I think the most important thing, our most eye-opening thing you showed me today was the $48 million investment that could be just 2.5% of shopping local. And that says a lot about what we can do if we start to keep our dollars right here in Leon County. Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess we don't need a motion because we did pass this last time, and thank you all for supporting Joe. Thank you for your efforts. And I know your leadership in All Saints has been very well, you've had a great impact there, I should say, but you've also organized with other associations and looking to spread this out among other business districts and other neighborhoods, so that's really important. And Mr. Chair, when I saw Joe's presentation, the 48 million and the 2.5%, that is a huge, I mean, that really stuck out to me. Mm-hmm. I also think it's an interesting point, and I'm not sure we had talked about this before, but the data that we don't have about the number of local businesses and being able to show that growth in the future, particularly with the entrepreneurs that we're funding or we're funding the resources, we may do more of that. I think that's a really good point. I hope we can talk about that at our blueprint meeting because it may be something OEV could look at more in the future of how to track those types of things and look at other policies or other things that might help local businesses. So thank you very much. And I'm sorry, we're going to...
Well, yeah, if I might, in 2018, one of the checklists we want to hit is to actually raise the money and bring civic economics, the folks who do this research, to Tallahassee and ask them, get information from you that you want from the county and set them loose for a month to go out and do the thousands of surveys and to collect the data so that we can really know what we're talking about and quantify things.
That would be great, yes. So this is a building partnership, we hope, and my last comment, Mr. Chair, would be we could all shop that weekend for a white elephant gift for our retreat, but the retreat's on your birthday, so that's a great way to spend your birthday. It's good to know, yes. Joe, thank you very much for your efforts. And
thank you so much for your help.
Shopping local that weekend.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, and congratulations.
Yes, sir, thank you. Mr. Administrator, do we have any public hearings?
We do not.
Do we have any speakers to be heard on agenda items?
We do not.
All right, we'll start with our county attorney.
I have nothing.
Mr. Administrator?
Mr. Chairman, former chairman, again, thank you very much, Commissioner Daly, for a great year, and congratulations, commissioners, on your anniversaries. Those are human years. You can do the conversion if you like in commission years. And Mr. Chairman, looking forward to a great year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Dozier?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Getting used to my new spot here, and thank you for giving me Commissioner Deloge's seat. Coveted at the end at the end of the dais here. No, really appreciate past chairman's work, as I said before, but thank you both, Commissioner Maddox and Commissioner Jackson, for stepping up as our new chair and vice chair. It's going to be another great year. Just a few comments. It is Giving Tuesday. There's been a lot of activity today, and we issued a proclamation. So on your behalf, I'll be reading that at an event later, but wanted to thank our local nonprofits for raising awareness and how much effort they're putting in. And I know Ellen Peklikevich and others from Village Square were here earlier, but they've had a busy week promoting this. And with Village Square, the item was on our consent, but really appreciate staff's efforts and looking forward to a lot of those events the next year. And I know the Village Square folks, aside from Commissioner Deloge and Commissioner Maddox, you're on the board now.
I am.
Excuse me, you're not anymore. Really excited about a great year for our partnership with Village Square. And the last thing is that we did not do a proclamation this month, but in lieu of that, I just wanted to mention that it is National Adoption Month. It's the end of National Adoption Month. And this is particular significance to many families, but mine included, having a sister who had a baby book, our chosen child. And it's a pretty significant undertaking for anyone to adopt a child or foster a child. So just wanted to mention that since we didn't have a proclamation. Hope we can do that next year. but celebrate everyone who brings kids in need into their families. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lindley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Congratulations.
Thanks, Mr. Lindley. It's getting out of order.
Commissioner Lindley.
Trying to see if we're on our toes.
Did he say, what did he say? Oh, I'm sorry, I answered anything.
It's all good. It's all good. Commissioner Lindley.
Okay, it's going to be a long year, isn't it? Actually, I don't really have anything, although I appreciated Mr. Berg's presentation a lot. I think there's matters of ethics and character that apply to a lot of things, including supporting your local communities, because I know nonprofits and churches and schools, we always go to our local businesses to help out with fundraising and events. And so even though sometimes it's really easier you think it's easier to just go to a big store or something, I think that it's just so much more interesting and it's so much more supportive of a whole community to think first about our local merchants and the people who do so much for our community. So I don't even shop on Amazon. I don't like Amazon. I think it's a big monster. I quit my Amazon Prime after about 6 months. And I'm here to say, join me, shop local.
Commissioner Lowe's. It's all you, buddy.
There.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. I know we have a lot to be thankful for, Mr. Chair. Great job, or Mr. Past Chair. Very nice, very well done this last year. I've got a letter that NACO was sending out in support of payment in lieu of taxes I'd like to sign on as a county, if that's acceptable to y'all as a body. Payment in lieu of taxes and secure rural schools, which doesn't impact us, but we actually get $500,000, $300,000 through $200,000 from payment in lieu of taxes. So it's a big deal for counties across the country, and I'd like to show our support if that's okay. And I'd like to make a motion, I guess, that we sign on the letter in support of payment in lieu of taxes and secure rural schools. Okay.
Motion on the floor, made by Commissioner Lowe's, seconded by Commissioner Lindley. Ms. Voss, you understand the motion on the floor? Great. All those in favor of the motion on the floor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries without objection.
And then I missed the last meeting because I got an opportunity to be in Japan for 10 days as a guest of the Japanese government, and I want to tell you, it was eye-opening. We visited a town that had 25,000 people. They have earthquakes pretty regularly. We had an earthquake while we were there, and they had prepared for a tsunami. Their worst-case scenario was a 3-meter tsunami, 10 feet. They had a 17-meter tsunami 6 years ago. Of the 25,000 people, 23,000 people were displaced. 1,700 people were killed, 200 bodies were never found. It was like 9/11 hit a town the size of Quincy, and it was unbelievable. We met with the mayor, who had been in the job a week. His wife died in the tsunami, and you talk about resiliency and things that happen, and makes you thankful for where we live and how things are going. There is a $12 billion restoration project that the Japanese federal government, effectively their version of the federal government, is putting in. It's got a seawall that's half a mile long and 30 feet high. That's $4 billion. It's staggering. But anyway, it's interesting. Government is government. We all do the same thing. In the United States, counties do very similar things. But the reality is, different countries have similarities and differences, and it was a real eye-opener for me, and I appreciate the opportunity to go. So other than that, Greg, glad to be here. Congratulations, Mr. Chair. Look forward to the year ahead.
Thanks, sir. Commissioner Daly? Commissioner Proctor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to you, Mr. Chairman. When our former chairman was the chairman, I supported him, and I did. And now that you're the chairman, I will be supporting you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And looking forward to a great year. I was pondering. The administrator said that there's a human year, and then there are commissioner years. And I was thinking of dog years, and then I was wondering, do you want to reconcile? It's more than those. Okay. I was curious. Thank you. Commissioners, I wanted you to just to note that Commissioner Deloge wrote a compelling story in the newspaper, I believe it was last week, and it was about the national tax reform. And prior to his letter, the president of the Tallahassee Realtor Board Board of Realtors wrote an article to our community speaking to the impacts that the current proposed tax reform would do in its current state of proposal. And that is to eliminate interest write-offs from homes, typical 501c3 donations, and stuff like that. On yesterday, I was privileged that Congressman Al Lawson spoke to two of my classes, and comments that he made were really eye-opening. The information, Commissioner Deloge, that you brought and presented from the White House was pretty amazing. And of all the commissioners that might have written a letter of alarm, perhaps we would at least expect Commissioner Deloge to have been the one to say, y'all, ding, 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 wake up. And which speaks to your character and the recognition that the middle class is going to be wrecked and severely hurt. Not only that, but our churches are going to be hurt because, as I was sharing with Brother Darrell Jones, that if this particular tax proposal goes through, then many of us, in terms of what we're seeking to make sure that we're good and sound ground on Judgment Day, many of us give our tithes and offerings for the Judgment Day of April 15th every year, and not the one that when the Lord returns. So if we close these loopholes, these deductions that people can now claim, our churches ain't going to receive the support that they probably are receiving now. And I think that as one of the leading 501c3 institutions of our community, that this poses an alarm. I'd like for, if Commissioner Deloge, anything you want to say, I read what you said, but I was thinking when I read from the President of the Board of Realtors, much like the presentation coming from the gentleman about shopping local, if the board would, if this board would welcome a presentation that we might understand not only what the Florida Board of Realtors has said, but how tax reform, if it's not voted down this week, may impose havoc on our community. I'm really deeply troubled. I think it will affect housing starts. As she reported, many of the upper purchases of homes is going to shut down. This is going to be a quagmire. So if it's still pertinent and no vote is taken this side of Christmas, maybe, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, if you would suffer our hearing from the President of the local Tallahassee Realtors on tax reform, I think is going to have a real impact, just like you said, Mr. Deloge. So,
any objection? Showing the record is approved. Mr. Proctor.
Thank you. Chairman, the board, you all are familiar, and I'm quite comfortable. I've met with you, or rather, you've met without me before, and I was curious as to the compelling status and our commitment to meet for our retreat, and if in fact that venue could be adjusted, and if it's not adjustable, certainly I recognize your efficiencies without me being present. And I merely wanted to say for the record that for things that I've said previously, ain't nothing changed about my thoughts of that, but I know that you will function well, and as I did previously, I will support whatever you guys conclude, and your creativity is you're very capable without my presence. But if it is at all possible, Mr. Chair, respectfully, I request, if possible, if we could have a change of venue there. If we can't, so be it. The Spring Hill Road issue is coming before the IA next week, and I have attempted to state to the public my thoughts about Spring Hill Road and my thoughts relative to the new proposal that has come since the adoption of our blueprint plan, which voters approved. And I'm hopeful that the piece which I wrote, if you've seen it, that you would be open to those views and thoughts. In today's newspaper, I can't remember the gentleman's name. I think he had a prominent name. His first name was Bill, and I can't remember his last name, but I was impressed by his first name, so I thought he was a scholar, and he presented a view which this bill agreed with, and I would encourage you to look and see at what that citizen said about our commitment to Spring Hill Road. So I'm looking forward to the IA meeting next week. And Nick, we wish you well as our chair. Mr. Vice Chair, we wish you well. I'm looking forward to continuing to work with. I think that Commissioner Daley said it best. We're the best county commission in the state of Florida, and I endorse that message. And I think that we're going to maintain that. And I'm hopeful that the comments I've made this evening will be well received. Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to thank the fellow board members for nominating me in this vice chairmanship, and I look forward to working with Nick and learning everything there is to know about being a good chair. And again, it surprises me, or it never surprises me, that most of the issues that we addressed are so focused not only on local businesses but on our local citizens and the work that the staff does here every day to make Tallahassee and Leon County such a great place to live and raise children.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And again, I just want to reiterate the thought that we work together as one team, as one unit. And I think that's what makes us different than a lot of governments across the state, is that we do work together as a good team. And so I would like to lead us in that same direction this year. And thank you guys for the confidence that you've instilled in me in giving me this position as chair. Is there anything else? Any more business before the commission? Motion to adjourn? We are adjourned.